Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our work session of Tuesday, May 3rd. Can I have a motion to open the work session?
So moved.
Can I have a second? Yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Ed, do you want to start us off regarding signs?
I'd be pleased to. So, board, this is a proposed local law to amend your sign ordinance. We initially introduced this on April 5, and we workshopped it at that time. And there were some comments and some suggestions and a desire, I think at that point, to move this in a slightly different direction in terms of some of the distinctions that would otherwise have been drawn if we had dealt with the temporary sign amendment that the board was looking to implement, but left alone other existing provisions in the code that created different categories of signs. So we would be adding yet another category, temporary signs, and it really highlighted how the code was looking at and treating differently different types of signs. And we talked at that time about a Supreme Court case called Town of Gilbert from 2015, and how that case was left it a little unclear as to how to write a sign ordinance in such a way that it was content neutral and just dealt with time and place type regulations and didn't get into content. We talked a little bit how we had three different opinions in that case and they all agreed on the outcome but not the reasoning. And so since then, we have another Supreme Court case that came out of the city of Austin, Texas, and that has lent a little bit more clarity to the analysis. And just recently this week, yet another, this is a flag case that came out of the Supreme Court from the city of Austin. Not as relevant to what we're talking about tonight, but there's a little more clarity in terms of where the law is on sign regulations. All that said, there's a red line in the packet, and I want to walk the board through the red line because it may be a little bit hard to follow. We've made a number of changes and there are some moving parts here. So if the board has the red line in front of them, I guess the easiest way to start is just with some of the easier changes. So on the first page, the existing code had a definition for, this is a mouthful, non-residential development temporary sign event, which is no longer needed based on the new language that we're adding. So that came out. There's another word change in the definition of residential sign. So we've just taken out the reference to the definition that we just removed. And there's another change or two. So like just for example, if you go to the very last page of the red line, there's a change in a section of the zoning code. And I just point that out, not because it's the most important thing, but one of the things that we had to do is make sure all the pieces and parts fit together in terms of cross-references and whatnot, definitions, because as you'll see when we turn the page here, we've taken out a chunk of existing code and in some cases pulled parts and pieces out and put them in other places of the code. Not changing substance so much, but just in terms of the reorganization that was needed after we took out the distinctions that we wanted to eliminate. So if you turn the next page, so 6410D, this section 10, is where we found those distinctions and different descriptions of different types of signs. And if you turn the next page, you'll see a table which did essentially the same thing. And here, what we've done is we've collapsed and gotten rid of this table and these distinctions. And on page 4 of the red line, you start to see some of that content reincorporated into the revised version. And then you see also that the new content that we have for residential signs. There were some small changes that we needed to make for consistency, having done all of this, moving and changing. One of the changes I'll point out, so in A1 on page 4, we now have the max size at 10 square feet, where it was 9 when you saw this on April 5. And that was really just to align it with the size with the existing sign limitations that were in the code already. As 5 feet, there was discussion at the last work session about why it needs to be 5 feet and why it can't be less, it shouldn't be less than 5 feet. But in A2, Roman numeral 3, it has the 5 feet setback. It has the other language that'll look familiar about where the signs shouldn't be posted. But this is with respect to what used to be called a residential sign, what we can all, I think about as the message sign. This is not the temporary sign, but this is to make the message sign align with the temporary sign and for the most part be treated the same way in terms of size and other aspects, like where it can be, shouldn't be on a tree, utility pole, bridge, etc. So those are going to match with respect to the temporary sign section that you'll read a few more paragraphs down. That's in B. One new portion of that section B I want to flag for you is this idea that temporary signs shouldn't be placed in the Millwood or the Chappaqua triangles. These are the triangles that I think you think of as the gateway to the Millwood and the Chappaqua hamlets. And traditionally the town has permanent signage there that it controls and has done that for a long time. So in those particular places, the code would prohibit placing temporary signs because, again, the town wants to exercise control over the appearance and the messaging that happens in those two places. The next section, C, is an example of where, after we deleted portions of the code, we had to pull pieces out and find new homes for some of the content. Some of that content winds up in C. On the next page, multiple signs. Again, a few tweaks. So the max size of all temporary signs and residential signs is now 10 square feet. We had existing language in the code that talked about a 10 square foot maximum for signs under the old regime. Well, clearly can't stay at multiple signs. We can't stay at a max of 10 if you've sized up already to one sign at a max of 10. So that's gone to 20. It includes signs not just on the residential property, but also in the adjacent right of way. So if you have a temporary sign and you put that in the right of way adjacent to your property, it counts towards the 20 feet. Reading down on that page, really no substantive changes in D15. Some of these provisions that are removed, like A1, A2, A3, actually just, again, found a home someplace else in the revised version of the local law. And the same thing on the next page. There's some word changes, but really no substantive changes as you read on to B, section B, and that's it. That takes you to the end. But I think that the discussion for the board is, did we get it right with the redrafting in terms of the different dimensions and the different provisions and coverage? Is there anything else that the board wants to see changed, added, subtracted before we push this out for a public hearing. And there is a resolution in the packet tonight that would schedule a public hearing.
I think you got it this time, Ed. I think, I mean, the summary of this is basically that residents can now put signs on the edge of their property, that we've harmonized those signs in terms of their size with other signs on residents' property. So now, you know, they can be larger where it used to be smaller signs. We've now allowed residents to put signs on public spaces other than the two triangles you mentioned.
Temporary signs though.
But only for temporary events, and there are limits on how many of the same sign, which avoids clutter, which is a key part of the code and has always been. And we've created a more uniform approach to this. So I think we've got it finally.
Me too. I'm very happy with this.
Yeah, I think it's clearer, it's more consistent, and the use of defined terms is a lot better. So I don't have any suggestions. The only thing I regret is that we've kept the 5-foot buffer, which I understand is for safety reasons, but I've seen driving through town that there are people who don't have that buffer, whether it's because of a fence or whatever they have going on in front of their property, so their speech will be limited. And there are a number of those signs that would violate this now, so I really, I maintain that I do wish it could be 3 feet instead of 5 feet, but I understand that it's not, so.
I do too.
Well, yeah, so I don't know what to do about that. I'm
It's a
not going to agree with
compromise.
saying that it's not safe, because that's not my area of expertise. But there are a lot of things that are within 3 feet, like mailboxes and other things that don't need a safety issue.
Alright.
So there are gonna be a number of signs that are out right now that will have to be removed. So I would say I would prefer it to change to 3 feet. I don't know how everyone else feels about that.
I agree. The only hesitation I have is that we were advised it does present a danger. So that's,
Yeah.
but I agree.
Yeah.
I mean,
It would be
it certainly wasn't the case before, you know, we definitely saw signs that were in, you know, I feel like if it was a scenario where there was a danger to the public, maybe that could be addressed, you know,
Well,
on a
that's
case by
already
case
in there,
basis.
that nothing can be where, you know, in a way that
Yeah.
is dangerous or, you know, blocks sight lines, things like that. That's kind of overrides anything.
We also know that in the past, the public right of way would have probably covered that. So we've increased that. So there's always going to be a compromise. And, you know, I think that Tom was pretty firm on the safety piece of this, especially with the sizes we're talking about. So I think unfortunately to me, that's a compromise that, you know, we have to concede.
Safety first, right?
I'd also offer that, you know, I think that there's comfort in that 5 feet is going to be a good rule of thumb in most cases. It's not to say that in some cases 3 feet couldn't work and be safe, but then we get into a rule of thumb that is sometimes going to lead to a need to do case by case assessments. And I think from an enforcement standpoint, if we can be comfortable at 5, it's a lot easier and more efficient than if it's 3 feet, and in some cases it's going to be questionable, and we're going to have to make, you know, decisions on the spot as to whether to pull something or not pull something.
I just think, I agree, I would much prefer it to be 3. I, you know, kind of argued with Tom about it, but it's, you know, if he really feels firmly that it's a safety issue, and I don't see how we can go against that,
I
you
would
know?
agree, and especially with the size of the signs too, so I did say I wouldn't go against his recommendation, I just simply regret that that's
Right.
what it has to be, so. And hopefully enforcement will be reasonable.
Yeah, I'd like to get this in the books, because I've already seen so many signs on, you know, where they shouldn't be. So I'd like to, you know, once we get this on the books, they actually will be where they're allowed to be, but right now they're not. It's annoying me. All right, so I'm in favor of moving this to public hearing.
Yeah.
You guys
Okay.
stop?
We will zoom off end.
Okay.
Actually, we are at the end.
Yeah, we just have a couple of
Just that.
administrative items, if anybody has a question, otherwise we can move right to resolutions.
Great.
All right,
I'm ready.
who has the resolutions? Here, Vicky has them.
Okay, great.
Yes, I have them. All right, we
Very
ready?
well, there we go.
Okay, I move to authorize the hiring of Nelson Santana to the position of fourth grade police officer 0134-01 within the Newcastle Police Department at the annual salary of $73,573 effective May 9th, 2022. This resolution is revised from April 26th, 2022.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, I move to authorize the posting for the position of part-time intermediate clerk 0187-02 within the development department at the hourly rate ranging from $15 to $17 per hour.
Got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move to authorize the revised memorandum of understanding for participation in the short-term Westchester Power extension contract for communities in the Con Edison service territory dated April 22nd, 2022 with a proposed 13.9 cent not to exceed rate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I move to adopt the following resolution. Whereas on April 19th, 2022, the town board introduced a proposed local law to amend its existing residential sign regulations. And whereas adoption of the proposed local law would be a type 2 action pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, and accordingly, no further environmental review is required. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby refers the annexed proposed local law to the Town of Newcastle Planning Board and the Westchester County Planning Department for comment thereon. Further resolved that the town board schedules a public hearing on the proposed local law, for May 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter is called on the agenda in the Assembly Room of Newcastle Town Hall, 200 South Greeley Avenue, Chappaqua, New York, 10514.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody.
Have a
Feel
lovely
better, guys.
evening.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everybody on Zoom, feel better.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.